Guys, welcome to lesson number 3 of Endgames you must know from beginner to master, and in today's lesson we are taking on knight versus pawn and different defensive techniques, winning techniques. Let's take a look at the first position. The pawn is on the 7th rank, on the 2nd rank, doesn't matter at this point. White have some defense, and you have to find the best defensive resources. So, of course, the only move here, the only logical move that makes sense is, of course, to play knight d1 and now king c2. And what we're going to do, we're going to play knight f2, and no matter what black do, they can't promote this pawn. You see, the king is too far. We can't really help our knight by simply moving our king, let's say, to g2 or g1. If our king was here, it's for sure a draw here. Let's say, yeah, king c1, we just can bring the king to the action. And if king c3, try to walk around this way, we can play knight d4, forking the pawn and the king, and now it is a draw. Now let's take a look at this position here again, the same example, and I'll demonstrate you a very, very important defensive technique you should know for sure. And what's the best move according to you here? Like, what move would you play? The move to make is knight e2. And you might say, what happens after king d2? Like, this knight has to move and pawn just promotes. But this is where the knight becomes a monster. We play knight d4, and the point is we're threatening to take this pawn. And if c1 queen promotion, we can fork king and queen and draw the game, because we will take the queen, and this is a draw. Now let's get to the next ending position. Ending number 11 is the knight's pawn, and this is where it's a bit complicated. Of course, if it was white to play and draw, they would play knight d2, take the pawn and draw the game. But here, unfortunately for white, they are losing, because after b2 there is actually no way to stop this b2 pawn. White responded with knight d2, king c1, and after knight d3 we're going a very calm king d1. Now all the squares are blocked. Next move, b1 queen promotion is coming. Black win the game. Let's get to ending number 12. When dealing with rook's pawn, there is another great defensive technique, but usually it's a bit more complicated. You know why? Because the mobility of this knight decreases as it gets closer to the edge, and I think if it was black to play, they would just play king g3, and there is no way to stop the pawn on h3, but it's white to play, and they have a defensive resource. It starts by playing knight g4, giving the king a check. Now king g3, if it was black to play in the starting position, king g3 would be winning, but here we have knight e3. Now if h2 pawn moves, we have well-known knight f1 pawn fork, and if king f3 we go knight f1, and again if king g2 we go back and then just kind of shuffle around, and if king f2 we go knight h2, and now our knight kind of continues this little knight g4 e3 f1 h2 g4 e3 f1 h2 g4, and it is a draw. This might happen in your games, and look, when it comes to it, you gotta know how to defend it. Let's get to ending number 13, the 7th rank rook's pawn. In the following position, it's very important to set up so-called barrier. So here, white play knight g3, and the point is, after h2, black's plan is to play king f3, and try to promote this pawn. And if this knight gets to an edge, then this king will take, go to g1, and basically promote the pawn. So this knight alone is not able to stop this pawn on h2, so if we just continue moving, our knight will eventually lose. So we gotta bring our king to the action, and we play king b7. And now the point is, king can't move to d2 and e3, because knight f1 will be a fork, and e4, e2, again the squares are taken due to this knight controlling them. So king has to go all the way around, and it will take some time for it to actually get to h1 square. king d4, king c6, king d5, king c5, and now there is a famous blocking maneuver. King f3, king d4, king g2, king e3, and after king h1, king f2, it is a stalemate. Now let's get to this specific position. It's black to play first, they play king c2, and once again we gotta stop this pawn from promotion. Knight g3, king d1, and once again there is a barrier. So king d3 will just play king d6, and again we reach the position that we had in the previous example. And of course king d2, knight f1, it's a fork. King d1, king d6, king e1, king e5, king f2, king f4, and now we don't even care what happens because we protect knight on g3. If this pawn promotes, we'll just eventually take it and make a draw. Let's get to the next ending position. King and knight checkmate. This rarely happens. I probably saw a couple of times Hikaru had the same position in his bullet or blitz games, but on several chess platforms, this position actually is considered a draw. But there is a checkmate in 2 moves if white start the game, and they play knight c1, blocking crucial a2 square from this king, and now leaving black with the only move, legal move, which is a2, and now everything is blocked. Knight b3 is a checkmate. Let's get to the final ending of this lesson. To wrap it up, we will look at so-called knight dumb squares, and this squares generally considered in, let's say, it doesn't matter. Okay, we have a pawn here, which actually helps us a lot. Basically, dumb squares are b7, g7, g2, and b2 for the knight. In the following case, white are actually winning because they can play a6, and the point is now black try king c8. They're trying to make sure if we take the knight, they will take, and it is a draw. But who said we're not playing checkers? We're actually playing for a win, as after a7, this knight, I mean, it just does a horrible job for the king, as this king is not able to go to b8. This king is blocked by this knight, and if king would have moved to b7, of course it is a draw, but now it is all blocked, and pawn promotes the next move, and white wins this chess game. I hope you guys enjoyed this endgame lesson. I hope you learned new things from it. Check out previous episodes and watch out for the future ones. I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.